is canned goods. Yes, they had canned goods back in the day. Problem with that was the cans were made out of lead. They were lined with lead, and the top was covered with lead. So they didn't have can openers to just open the can and be freed from the lead. They would have to like jab it down in so the lead would get into the food, and that was another cause of death as long as with wounds. They had pretzels, which we got from the Germans. Pretzels were very popular. They would write home and ask for them very often. Candy. This candy was made in 1860 and is still made today. It's a very popular candy. Does anyone know what this is? Guess what this could be? Along the lines of food? Sugar. This is what they use to satisfy their sweet craving. Just with their knives, scrape that off, and that was their sugar. So we sent soap to them because, as I said, sanitation was a huge problem. They would only take baths maybe once a week if they were lucky, maybe once a month, wherever they could find a river during their march, like the one that is here. If they came upon one, they could bathe themselves, but so many men were so dirty and they would all bathe themselves at once, and they were going to the bathroom. The horses were also using the water, so they weren't really getting clean. Everything was, being reused and still very dirty. That brings me to the handkerchief. Name some things that we use the handkerchief for today. Can anyone name anything that we use the handkerchief for today?
Besides blowing our nose?
Yeah. Okay, so today we just use it for blowing our nose, because what else would you want to use it for after you blew your nose, right? Back in the day, they needed to use it for many things because they didn't have as many resources as we have today. So they used it to blow their nose, they used it to clean themselves, and they also used it as a coffee filter. They would get coffee beans, and they would chop up the coffee beans and then use that as a filter. They would use it as a filter to make their beans and their corn from the canned goods. So everything was being reused so much that nothing was clean, nothing was sanitized. So for every 2 men that died on a war battle, 1 man died because of bacteria and filth-related causes. A popular thing that was sent to the men, the most popular, was the socks. They needed socks very badly, because they would just walk and their socks would go very quickly. So little girls and boys starting at the age of 5 would start making the socks for the men, and then it became a way to communicate with the soldiers. They would send little notes with the socks. These are actual notes that the women and men made. This woman is saying, I made these socks for you, and I'm asking for your hand in marriage. I'm asking for a date, and if you are married, then send the socks to somebody who isn't, because I am looking for a man, yes. And this is a little girl who's made a pair of socks, her first pair, and they're not perfect, but she's wishing the soldier that, he can do it, and of course he did, because they had very little back then. This was their undergarments, not boxer briefs or, anything decorative. That was their undergarment. Blankets. Blankets were very important back then, to keep them warm. That was their bed. They didn't have, blow-up mattresses or, nice little forts. They didn't have inns that they could stay at. They stayed on the bare dirt ground, no tents, nothing to block the wind or anything like that, so it was pretty harsh. They were stuffed with the same thing that the pilgrims were stuffed with, but they started to get fleas and lice and lots of insects in them as they laid on the floor bed and got very dirty, so the women would make it without anything in it, so the men could just stuff leaves and twigs, anything that could fill it as they laid, and then it made it a lot lighter for them in the morning. When it was wet, it would dry very easily and become lighter. And we don't have any actual quilts from the day because they were all used to bury the men. So this is that we make. Anyone have any questions? This was used as a hearing tool because the men would go have hearing loss very frequently due to the artillery and everything else going on in the war. So you put this up to your ear and someone speaks to the other end and it amplifies the hearing pretty efficiently if anyone would like to join. Don't shout.
Yep. And what are these things?
Oh, this is very important. Very good question. All right, I'm going to start with the pillows, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
These pillows, we use pillows today, to rest our heads on for comfort. Back then, they needed the pillows to elevate their amputated wounds. Anything that was cut off, that's what they would use to hold it up and stop the blood from continuing to flow, as well as the bandages. After cutting off any body part, they would wrap it up. But before wrapping it up, they had to stop the bleeding somehow because they didn't have stitches. So women would collect pounds and pounds and pounds of lint. Lint was very, very important back in the day. They would take any, ripped up clothing, hankies, anything that they could, and just scrape all day long to get any piece of lint that they could. And this is what they used to stuff the wounds with to stop the bleeding, and then bandage, and then elevate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.